What if I told you the hobbies you choose aren't just hobbies, but a silent confession of who is running your inner world right now? Because every time you say, "I don't have time," what you're really saying is, "I don't have a structure strong enough to hold my energy." And Jung would smile at that. Not because he's judging you, but because he understood something most men miss. Your life is shaped less by your intentions and more by the symbols you live inside. So let's be direct. High-value hobbies isn't about looking impressive. It's about becoming psychologically expensive to waste. It's about building a life where your attention has a spine, your emotions don't hijack you, and your presence feels grounded even when nobody is applauding. And the fastest way to do that, starting this weekend, is to choose hobbies that train the four forces Jung saw in every man's development: discipline, creativity, confrontation, and meaning. Because if you don't train those forces consciously, the unconscious will train you unconsciously through cravings, distraction, procrastination, and the quiet resentment you feel when you watch other men live with purpose. And here's the twist: the hobby you avoid is usually the hobby you need, not because it's trendy, because it threatens your persona. Jung used the word persona to describe the mask you wear to function in society. It's not evil, it's necessary. But it becomes dangerous when you confuse the mask for your identity, when your whole life becomes performance, appearing confident, appearing busy, appearing fine. And the moment you're alone, you fall apart into screens, cheap dopamine, and the same thoughts you promised you were done with. That's not weakness. That's a man whose inner structure is undertrained. So in this video, I'm going to give you the high-value hobbies every man should master, not as a list you forget, but as a psychological toolkit. And I'll show you how each one shapes your psyche, your aura, your social power, your calm, and your ability to attract opportunities without chasing them like a starving man. Not with gimmicks, with inner architecture. But first, you need one principle. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. Most men think becoming a man is about adding more confidence, more status, more money, more game. Individuation is different. It's about integration. Taking the parts of you that are split, your discipline and your impulses, your ambition and your fear, your masculinity and your tenderness, and forging them into one aligned force. A hobby becomes high value when it forces integration. So let's start where most men don't want to start, with the body. Not because the body is everything, but because the body never lies. Your body is the most honest mirror of your psyche. If your body is weak, inconsistent, neglected, it's rarely just physical. It's symbolic. It often means your inner authority is soft, and that softness bleeds into every conversation, every boundary, every decision. A high-value hobby is strength training done like a ritual, not like a flex. When you train consistently, you're doing something Jung would recognize immediately. You are building ego strength. The ego, in Jung's sense, is your conscious center, the part that chooses, decides, directs. Without ego strength, you don't have a personality, you have a mood. You don't have direction, you have impulses. Strength training teaches you to do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it. That is not fitness, that is sovereignty. Start this weekend in the simplest way possible. Pick a basic routine you can repeat, not a complicated one you can't sustain. Your goal is not exhaustion. Your goal is identity reinforcement. When you finish a session, you're proving to your unconscious that you are the kind of man who keeps promises. And the unconscious listens to behavior more than words. You can tell yourself you're confident 1,000 times, but 1 month of consistent training speaks louder than any affirmation. Now, pair that with a second hobby that sharpens confrontation, a martial art, not because you want to fight, because most men are terrified of controlled intensity. They either explode or avoid. Jung would call that a shadow problem. The shadow is the part of you you disown. Your aggression, your competitiveness, your desire to dominate, your hunger to win. When you don't integrate that force, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out as passive aggression, jealousy, sarcasm, or the need to prove yourself in stupid ways. Martial arts are high value because they civilize the shadow. They teach you to stand in front of pressure and breathe. They teach you that fear doesn't mean stop, fear means focus. And socially, a man who has made peace with intensity carries a different energy. He doesn't need to posture. He doesn't need to talk big. He has that quiet, don't test me calm that women and men both feel immediately. Not because he's dangerous to others, but because he's no longer dangerous to himself. This weekend, don't overthink it. Find a gym or class, or even drill fundamentals safely at home with basic conditioning and movement. The point is to step into controlled discomfort on purpose. Your psyche needs that, because if you avoid discomfort, you become the kind of man who negotiates with his weaknesses, and the world punishes that negotiation. Now let's move to a hobby most men underestimate. Writing, not for school, not for posting, for integration. Jung used techniques like active imagination and dream work to communicate with the unconscious. And whether you realize it or not, your unconscious is speaking all the time, through moods, sudden urges, irrational attraction, and the recurring patterns that keep sabotaging you. If you don't translate those signals into consciousness, they run your life from the basement. Journaling is high value because it forces clarity. It turns vague anxiety into named fear. It turns confusion into structure. And here's the part that changes everything. Writing lets you separate your true voice from your inner noise. Most men live with a mental crowd in their head. Voices of parents, teachers, ex-friends, internet opinions, old embarrassments. They think that crowd is me. It's not. It's a complex. Jung described complexes as emotionally charged clusters of associations that hijack your reactions. You can't fight a complex with willpower. You dissolve it with awareness. Writing is awareness on paper. Start this weekend with a simple practice. Every morning for 10 minutes, write without stopping. Not positive thoughts. Truth. Then ask one question that Jung would respect. What part of me am I refusing to meet? And write the answer even if you don't like it, especially if you don't like it. That discomfort is the door. And if you want to take it deeper, add dream notes. Jung considered dreams a royal road to the unconscious, not as fortune-telling, but as symbolic messages. Write your dreams the moment you wake up. Look for repeating images: being chased, being lost, being tested, being late, being naked, being trapped. Those are not random. Those are your psyche giving you a map of what you're avoiding. A man who reads his own symbols becomes harder to manipulate, harder to confuse, and much harder to break. Now we shift to something that instantly upgrades your masculine aura: learning an instrument. This is where many men secretly resist because it exposes beginner status. And that is exactly why it's high value. Jung understood that a man must integrate not only power, but also soul. In Jung's language, men often encounter the anima, an inner feminine principle connected to feeling, imagination, and relatedness. If a man rejects that aspect, he becomes rigid, emotionally dull, obsessed with control, and secretly starving for depth. He tries to fill the hunger with validation, lust, or status, and it never works. Music trains your nervous system to feel without collapsing. It teaches patience, it refines your perception, and it does something psychologically rare. It reconnects you to beauty without needing a reason. That makes you magnetic, because most men are dry inside. They perform strength, but they don't radiate aliveness. Music brings aliveness back. Start this weekend by choosing one instrument you're willing to be bad at for 30 days. Guitar, piano, even a simple digital keyboard. Your goal is not to impress anyone. Your goal is to build intimacy with your own learning curve. The man who can stay calm while he's bad at something becomes unstoppable because he's no longer held hostage by ego. And a woman can feel that instantly. This man doesn't need approval to move. Now let's talk about a hobby that creates real-world leverage: cooking. And I know, some men hear this and think it's not masculine. That's persona talk. That's the mask trying to defend itself. Cooking is high value because it makes you self-sufficient, yes, but deeper than that. It trains attentive presence. Jung would say you're transforming raw material into nourishment. Symbolically, you're turning chaos into order. That's what a man does, not with speeches, with competence. Most men are consumers. They consume content, consume attention, consume women's energy, consume convenience. High-value men create. Cooking is creation you can touch, smell, taste. It builds the archetype of the provider, not as a stereotype, but as an inner stance. I can generate comfort, stability, and pleasure through skill. That's powerful. Start this weekend with one signature meal you can repeat. Learn how to season properly. Learn one sauce. Learn one protein technique. Learn one healthy staple. Then repeat it until it becomes effortless. Repetition turns a skill into identity, and identity turns into presence. Now, I want to hit a hobby that upgrades your social power in a way that feels almost unfair: dancing. And before your ego flinches, listen carefully. The reason many men avoid dancing is the same reason they avoid emotional expression: fear of looking foolish, fear of being seen, fear of the body becoming honest. Dancing is high value because it integrates masculine confidence with fluidity. It forces you to inhabit your body with rhythm. It breaks the stiff, guarded posture that screams insecurity. Jung would recognize this as a move toward wholeness, the reconciliation of opposites, strength and softness, control and surrender, leadership and responsiveness. Women read movement before they read words. They sense tension, hesitation, authenticity. A man who can move with calm certainty, without trying too hard, signals a psyche that is integrated. That is attraction at the symbolic level. This weekend, start private if you need. Practice basic rhythm. Put on music and train your body to relax while staying grounded. Or take a beginner class. The point isn't performance. The point is to stop living as a head with legs. Become embodied. Embodied men don't need tricks. Now let's sharpen the mind with a hobby that makes you dangerous in a different way. Strategy games like chess. Chess is high value, not because it makes you smarter in trivia, but because it trains you to see consequences. Most men live impulsively. They act, then rationalize. They chase, then regret. They speak, then panic. That's a lack of inner foresight. Chess trains delayed gratification, pattern recognition, and calm under pressure. Jung spoke about the psyche balancing opposites. Chess forces you to balance aggression and defense, patience and initiative. It teaches you that every move reveals you. That's a life lesson disguised as a game. Start this weekend by learning basic principles and playing slow games, not blitz. Slow games make you confront your impatience, and your impatience, if you pay attention, is often where your insecurity lives. Now we go into the outdoors because Jung was clear. Modern man is cut off from nature, and that severance creates neurosis. Nature isn't a nice hobby. It is psychological medicine. Hiking, trail walking, or simply long, purposeful walks in natural environments are high value because they restore the psyche's depth. In nature, your mind stops being a noisy machine and becomes a sensing organism again. Jung believed the unconscious is not just personal, but also collective, meaning we carry ancient patterns. Those patterns wake up in nature. You remember you are an animal with instincts, not a screen-addicted brain chasing notifications. Start this weekend with a long walk alone, without music, without podcasts. Let silence confront you. At first, it will feel boring, then uncomfortable, then revealing. That revealing is the unconscious rising, and you're going to want to run back to distraction. Don't. Stay. A man who can sit with himself becomes a man others want to sit with. Now, here's a hobby that few men treat seriously, and that's why it's so powerful. Meditation, not as spiritual decoration, but as training the observer. Jung didn't teach meditation in the modern sense, but his whole approach demanded a relationship to inner images without being possessed by them. That's what meditation builds, the gap between stimulus and reaction. Most men are possessed by lust, by anger, by insecurity, by validation hunger. They call it personality. It's possession. Meditation is high value because it gives you inner space. And in that space, you can choose. When you can choose, you become free. And a free man is irresistible, not because he chases, but because he's not desperate. This weekend, do 10 minutes a day. Sit, breathe naturally, and watch thoughts like clouds. You are not the thought, you are the awareness behind it. That single shift changes how you text, how you flirt, how you handle rejection, how you handle silence. Silence stops feeling like danger. Now let's talk about a hobby that upgrades your voice and your presence instantly. Public speaking, debate, or improv. Jung would say the persona is not the enemy. It's a tool. But most men have a weak persona. They either overcompensate with arrogance or hide behind quietness. Speaking is how you refine the mask until it serves the self instead of replacing it. Improv is high value because it trains spontaneity without panic. It teaches you to stay relaxed when you don't know what comes next. That is charisma. Charisma isn't scripted lines. It's nervous system confidence. Start this weekend by practicing speaking out loud alone. Read something and speak it clearly. Record yourself. Listen without self-hate. That cringe you feel, that's the shadow. That's the rejected part of you that wants to stay hidden. You're not going to think your way out of it. You're going to train your way through it. Now, I'm going to give you a hobby that might sound simple, but it's one of the most high-value skills a man can build. Learning a language. Not because it's impressive, but because it forces humility and expands identity. Jung knew that identity is not fixed. It's shaped by symbols, culture, and meaning. A new language gives you new symbols. New symbols give you new thoughts. New thoughts give you new choices. Start this weekend by choosing one language and committing to daily exposure. 10 minutes. Consistency matters more than intensity. Language learning also teaches you patience with yourself, and that patience becomes emotional strength in relationships. A man who can stay steady while he's learning is less likely to become reactive while he's loving. Now, let's ground all of this with the hobby that quietly separates men who talk from men who build: craftsmanship. Woodworking, basic repair, building, fixing, hands-on creation. Jung would see this as symbolic transformation, taking raw material and shaping it with intention. That is literally the masculine principle. Order imposed on chaos, not violently, but skillfully. Most men today have no relationship with tools, with making, with tangible competence. They live in abstraction. That creates insecurity, even if they hide it. When you can build, fix, and craft, you carry a different kind of confidence. Quiet, real, unshakable. You don't need to convince anyone. Start this weekend by learning one basic project, something small, something you can finish. The goal is completion. Completion feeds the psyche. Incompletion drains it. Every unfinished thing becomes a psychic weight. So pick something you can complete and let that completion become your new standard. Now here's the part most men miss. You don't need all these hobbies. You need the right combination. Jung would say wholeness is balance. So your weekend mission is to choose one hobby that trains discipline, one that trains creativity, one that trains confrontation, and one that trains meaning. If you choose only discipline, you become rigid. If you choose only creativity, you become scattered. If you choose only confrontation, you become aggressive. If you choose only meaning, you become dreamy and ineffective. Balance creates a man who feels complete in the room. And when you feel complete, you stop begging reality to complete you. So let's make it practical, because I don't want you inspired for 10 minutes and then back to the same weekend. Pick your 4. Discipline, strength training, running, martial fundamentals, daily skill repetition. Creativity, music, cooking, writing, art, language. Confrontation, martial arts, debate, cold showers if you want a simple discomfort practice, long walks without distraction, anything that makes you face resistance. Meaning, nature time, meditation, journaling, dream work, reading real books slowly and reflecting. And here's the Jungian secret that turns these hobbies into a transformation instead of a phase. Treat them as rituals that speak to the unconscious. The unconscious doesn't understand your New Year's promises. It understands consistent symbols. When you lift, you're telling it, I can carry weight. When you write, you're telling it, I can face truth. When you learn music, you're telling it, I can feel without fear. When you fight in controlled training, you're telling it, I can handle intensity without losing myself. When you walk in silence, you're telling it, I don't need noise to exist. That's why these hobbies make you high value. Not because they impress people, because they create a man who doesn't leak energy. A man whose libido, Jung's term for psychic energy, is directed, not scattered. And once your energy is directed, your whole social reality changes. You start saying less and meaning more. You start making choices faster. Your posture changes. Your eyes change. Your voice gets slower. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing. You start selecting. But let me warn you about the most common trap: collecting hobbies like masks. The persona loves this. It says, if I become the guy who does this, people will respect me. That turns hobbies into performance, and performance creates emptiness. So here's a test you can run this weekend. Choose one hobby you will do, even if nobody ever finds out. Not even your closest friends. Choose one that is purely between you and your inner world. That hobby will build the real you. The rest can be social, sure, but you need at least one private ritual that anchors you. Now I'm going to push you into something deeper, because Jung's work is not about looking better, it's about becoming real. Ask yourself, what hobby scares you because it reveals your weakness? That is your doorway. If you're scared to dance, you probably need embodiment. If you're scared to fight, you probably need controlled aggression. If you're scared to write, you probably need honesty. If you're scared to lift, you probably need discipline. If you're scared to be in nature alone, you probably need solitude. The fear is the map. And listen carefully. Your goal is not to remove fear. Your goal is to expand your capacity to hold it. Jung would say the self, the deeper organizing center of your psyche, doesn't show up when you're comfortable. It shows up when you're being forged. So when you start this weekend and you feel resistance, don't interpret it as, this isn't for me. Interpret it as, this is exactly the part of me that has been asleep. Because the man you want to become is not created by motivation. He's created by repetition, under resistance. So pick your first ritual right now in your mind. Decide what you're doing tomorrow morning, not sometime. A specific act, a specific time. And when your brain tries to negotiate, notice it. That negotiation is the old complex trying to stay in control. Smile at it. Then do the act anyway. And after you do it, don't reward yourself with distraction. Reward yourself with awareness. Sit for 2 minutes and let the feeling land. I did what I said. That sensation is rare for many men. It's the beginning of inner authority. Then, later in the day, do the second ritual, creativity. Even 15 minutes. And when you're doing it, don't multitask. Don't check your phone. Don't tell yourself you'll do it better later. Do it with presence. Presence is what separates a hobby from a transformation. Then choose your confrontation ritual, something that forces you to stay calm under intensity, not reckless. Controlled, and afterward, write one sentence. What did I learn about my fear? One sentence. That's enough to make the unconscious feel seen. And finally, choose your meaning ritual. Walk in nature, meditate, reflect, read a few pages slowly, and ask what symbol stands out. Jung would tell you that the psyche speaks in symbols, and the symbol that grabs you is rarely random. It's usually the next lesson you need. If you do this for one weekend, you will feel something shift. Not in a magical way, in a structural way. You'll start to feel heavier, in a good way, more grounded, less needy, less reactive. And once that starts, you'll begin to notice how many men are living like leaves in the wind, blown around by impulse, drama, and thirst for attention. You won't hate them. You'll just stop being one of them. Now keep your mind on this, because the next part is where most men slip. They start strong, then disappear. So don't aim for perfect. Aim for a minimum. You can't fail. The unconscious respects consistency, not intensity. 2 days a week beats one heroic week followed by nothing. 10 minutes a day beats 2 hours once. So choose the smallest version that still feels like a challenge, and treat it like a contract. Because when you master high-value hobbies, you're not just learning skills. You're building archetypes inside you. Your inner warrior through discipline and training, your inner magician through learning and strategy, your inner lover through music, cooking, dance, and presence, your inner king through order, responsibility, and completion. And when those archetypes are awake and balanced, you don't need to chase confidence. Confidence becomes a side effect of inner alignment. So, as you go into this weekend, the question isn't which hobby looks coolest. The question is, which hobby turns you into a man your own psyche respects? Which hobby makes you harder to distract, harder to manipulate, harder to derail? Which hobby makes you feel like you're building a life that has weight? Pick it, do it, then do it again, and pay attention to what rises in you when you stop running, because that is where your next level has been waiting.